Hey, welcome back, everybody. Of course, this is Dr. Keith McNally, and this is the Question Guy podcast. And I definitely want to get this right. I'm here with Rhonda Reif.
Correct.
All right. And she's going to tell me all about me. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation because in my previous conversation with Rhonda, she told me some things that only I really know about myself, unless you've been acquainted with me for quite some time. And the most intriguing thing she said about me was, you're no fun at parties. Which is true because that's exactly, I am not fun at parties. And I hate to be a spoiler on that, but I was never, in my youth, I wasn't popular. I wasn't the most good looking. I wasn't the most athletic. And quite frankly, I wasn't a part of the big social group. And anybody in my high school could attest to that, and probably even college as well. But the real question is, Rhonda, how did you know that? And that's what we want to get into today.
Um, so just a little bit about me, and also the listeners should know we don't know each other. Like we only just talked via this Zoom meeting, so it isn't like I would have known you for a long time. So what we're going to talk today is about numbers, the science of numbers based on Pythagorean mathematics. And I've been a numbers person my whole life, ever since I was a little kid, and I really love it. And the numbers are predictable. Pythagoras found that everything in nature, music, art, everything is predictable and can be reduced down to a mathematical value. So after that, then there's a predictability. So by your first name, looking at the combination of the letters and adding those up in the alphabet, I could tell that you were an 8. And I just did your first name that day. So what's really interesting is the more I did your chart, the more 8s showed up. So 8s are not people that are fun. They're not fun. They're not designed to be fun. They are not invited to parties because they are fun. They're invited because they're going to take care of all the details. And 8 absolutely looks at the details. And they are the ones who are going to fill the punch bowl. They're going to fill the chip bowl. They're going to go to the grocery store to get more ice. That's what the 8s are for. They make really good accountants. They do really good with anything with numbers, statistics, anything like that, because they really do have a really fine attention to detail. So what's interesting is that, and I'm not doing numerology because Pythagoras was around about 2,000 years before numerology started happening. And
Okay.
that's because people found that his work was so good that then they cherry picked parts of it. So there is overlap, but it goes much deeper than that. So your first name, Keith, is an 8, and your last name, McNally, is an 8. So you are a double 8, which means that absolutely, if I ask to borrow your stapler, I better put it back exactly where I found it, because you will know that it has been moved. You have that kind of fine attention to detail. And even if you live in chaos or your desk is chaos, you will know exactly where that file is or where that pen is or where that is. You'll be able to go right to it. And that will amaze people. But the 8s can also be super serious. That's why I say, like, you're not really fun at parties. And they also can get to the point where they really like structure and routine, but they've got to be really careful because you have 3 8s in your chart. So
Oh,
you've got to be really careful. Yeah, you've got to be really careful that you don't pigeonhole yourself into a place where you are so rigid, that you become so structured and so scheduled and so everything, that you're like the mighty oak that's going to snap, that
but
you're so
that's a real,
structured
that's a place of comfort though, being structured and rigid.
because you're an 8. Now,
Yeah,
somebody who's a
well,
3 would be like, oh, this is horrible. This is like being in prison. So yeah, you have to, but what I'm telling you is that you have to have that balance, because when you turn the 8 on its side, it's a roller coaster. So that's kind of how your life is. But also you notice it has to have balance, or it's not infinity or an 8 any longer. It's out of shape. So that's where I'm cautioning you, is that you have so many 8s in your chart that you
but
need
where
to
did you
really
get the
find
third eight
balance.
from? You got, I know the two
So
eights, the first and last name.
right. So your middle name is Joseph, which is a 1. So when we add up your first, middle, and last name, we come up with your total name number, which is also an 8, because it's a
Okay.
17, and
Okay.
1 plus 7 is 8. So most people, they don't go around, most people call you by your first name. And that's why I was asking you, do you go by Dr. Keith? Do you go by Dr. McNally? All of those kinds of things. And so we can get into that a little bit later, because that changes your vibration. And think of it as if you've ever thrown stones in a pond. how different size stones will cause different ripples.
Hmm.
And that is exactly what's going on here, because when I say Keith, a certain vibration comes from my voice, comes and hits you almost like sonar and bounces back that perception. That's where I get that. So it's like the 8 is going to have a different ripple, and it's going to give me back a different perception. So you're going to I always equate it to like in the original Ghostbusters, the Stay Puft Marshmallow guys walking downtown, and he's this big sticky marshmallow, and like he's getting in everybody's way, and everybody's coming up at him. Like every number has a different vibration, so people will respond differently to that. So you are very structured. Like you are not somebody that, like, you know, you told me you're a professor. You are not somebody who is going to take lame excuses for assignments not being done. There's just no excuse. You had the deadline, you had the syllabus, you knew what was going on, you should have been prepared for today. And that is who you are. Like that is just what it is. So that's why this becomes important, because if I was going to take you for a class, I would absolutely do your numbers first. And I would know then what the expectations are. Like that helps me to understand like what's going to be expected, or, you know, how I'm going to have to structure myself with that. So anyway, those are the name numbers. Then your birth date is an 11. And we talked a little bit about, no, your birth date is a 7. It's a 7.
So 8/23/1969.
8/23, 1969. 8. No, it's an 11. 8,
Okay.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 20. Yeah, it's an 11, because there's more than one way to do it. And that's the thing too, is that 11 is a master number, is that you always want to look for the master number. Now, there are some people out there who say, oh, if you get a master number, you don't want it, just get rid of it. No, that is not it at all. The 11s, 22s, and 33s, it means that you have a higher assignment, that you expect more out of yourself, you expect more out of other people, that you are here to do something of a special purpose. And we need the 1 through 9s. We need all of those people. You know, we need the 8s. 8s are lessons of money, you know, so you're somebody who's either going to have a lot of money or no money. It's going to ebb and flow, ebb and flow. Like it's never going to be, you know, consistent, especially with all these 8s you got going on. So, you know, I would definitely expect you to be somebody who plans for the future financially with
Right.
all of the 8s. So the 11s are gifted teachers. They're visionaries. They're intuitive. People really either like them or they don't like them. And that's with any master number. But the 11 is definitely the gift is of teaching and expressing oneself. And again, you are a teacher, but it could even be something as simple as, you know, being a Cub Scout leader or helping somebody find something in a store where you don't even work. It's all about helping those people to find the answers to questions that they might have. So you have that gift with that being your birth date. And then when you add that to your name, you are a 1. So the 1 is the leader. It's all about uh, setting new things, starting new things. And that's not your job. Your job is not to finish things. Your job is to come up with ideas, get people in line, you come up with this stuff, and then you assign it to other people. And then you will come back and check, because you're an 8. You absolutely will make sure that that T is crossed and that I is dotted. So you want to do that. But the 1 is the number of the entrepreneur. There are people that start that. It's a leadership number. And, you know, they don't mind doing things by themselves. Other people that are maybe like a 2, they would be like, oh my gosh, you're going to go over there by yourself. They wouldn't understand that. So the 1 is the kind of person that if everybody decided they wanted pizza and the bus was stopping and you're like, no, I'm going to go to this sushi bar, you'd be like, okay, I'll meet you guys back here. And everybody in the group would be like 9s. They'd be like, oh, we can't let him go alone. And you're like, no, guys, like, it's okay. I can go by myself. But the people that are other numbers that don't have that 1 in their chart, they don't understand that. Now, whereas a little conflicting is that 8 absolutely wants to check, double check, triple check, make sure everything's in line. But the 1 in you is almost like, okay, I can't believe I've got to recheck somebody's work again. Like you want to get it done. You want to get started on the next project. You want to be going ahead and coming up with that creative idea or whatever that is. Now, what's interesting is that you told me that you teach leadership classes, and so, or you're working on leadership projects. So that's perfectly in alignment with what's going on with your purpose. You know, a lot of people ask me, "What's my life purpose?" So you can see where the teacher, the leader, all of those things are in there, and you're going to be the kind of person who's going to teach them with a lot of structure. Like they're going to have like a plan of how they need to solve different problems and things like that. You're not a marketing guy. Like that would be somebody else's gig. Yours is more about the leadership and the tenacity of what it takes in order to keep that nose to the grindstone kind of thing. Um, and when you go by the question guy, it's a one. So it's also a one. And prof is also a one. So you can see how we
But
choose
so the
things,
question guide is was something that developed. It wasn't anything that I, set out to become.
but you chose that particular thing that brought that vibration to you. Or you would have called yourself not the question guy. You would have called yourself just question guy, or the guy who questions, or you would have done something differently that would have had that to start something new you're wanting to be. So, and your students wouldn't have to call you prof. They could call you doctor, or they could call you Dr. McNally or Dr. Keith McNally. And when you go by Dr. Keith McNally, you're an 11. So there's that leadership again. There's that visionary, that teacher. Where you go by Dr. McNally, you're a 3. So I want to tell you, you are the most fun when you go by Dr. McNally. So if you want to get invited to a party today, just introduce yourself as Dr. McNally, and that's going to give you a totally different vibe than if you are going just by Keith. So,
So can I,
because Keith, they'll
uh,
be like, "Oh yeah, could you like put these coats in the coat room?"
I
Go ahead,
I
go
was going to
ahead.
say,
I didn't hear
so
what you said.
can you, are these, can I test them? So if anybody were to say, listen to this conversation and then kind of figure it out for themselves, can they test these numbers? Like you said, if I would go by Dr. McNally, by my very nature, I'm not going to step into a party and be overly social, but would somebody receive
No,
me? What's that? Go ahead.
they would receive you differently. They wouldn't say if you said, "Hey, this is Keith. Can I come to your party?" or "I want to come to your party." They wouldn't feel so much to say, "Oh yeah, Keith, on the way, could you pick up like some pretzels and maybe go through and get some sub sandwiches?" Like they're not going to be asking you to do that. If you said, "Here, I'm Dr. McNally. I'm going to RSVP," they might say, "Hey, you know what? Could you maybe come up with some icebreakers for us?" You see the difference. The perception is different because you're having a different sonar go out, a
Hmm.
different vibration. You're throwing a different stone in the water. So that's going to go out and signal something different than what comes back. It doesn't mean that you're going to instantly be like dancing on tables and having fun. It
Okay.
it just means that the perception that people have of you is going to be different. And we subconsciously know those predictabilities because, like I said, Pythagoras found that everything reduced to a mathematical number, each one of those numbers has its own characteristics, its own personality, its own trait. And if you can hone into that, you can do that. Now, when you go by Keith McNally, you are a 16, which is a 7. So that's the more spiritual side of you. Again, that's that more sort of like the 7 is like a 1, but with a hat on. So when you look at the characteristic of that, you're going to say, okay, so the 7 is kind of like a lonely number. It's kind of like the 1, but it's just a little bit different. Like it hides a little bit. So the 1 is going to be like, I'm going to go off and do my own thing. And the 7 is, I'm going to go do my own thing to find myself. So it's a little bit different, but they both are things that are comfortable with that. And with the Joseph being the 1 in your chart too. So you have lots of 8s, 1s, and 11s, which some people have all different numbers, but you have that repeating kind of thing. So you definitely wanted to give this light to the world, this particular gift to the world of teaching structure, dependability, reliability, hard work. 8s are very hardworking, and all of those kinds of things. So do you have any questions about that before I go on with the rest of the stuff I know about you?
I do. But the
Okay.
biggest question is, this wasn't always consciously true for me. Like I wasn't always aware of who I am. And then growing up, and especially as an adult, and I always say I'm a half century old at this point, that I'm coming into my true self. So all of those things that you are saying are really maturing in me as a person now. I've always been structured and very rigid because I get up at a certain time, I run my 6 miles, I have a very structured life in my day to day, and so that's always been me. That's from probably since I was born. But the more that you're talking about the spirituality component and just really being my individual and being confident and comfortable as an individual, that's more of a present day me than my life. Does that make sense?
So yeah, it does. And what the way that this is that it's broken down. I actually have a thing where it's broken down into 4 stages of your life, 4 quadrants. So we can look at the quadrants, which I did go ahead and do. But also, I want you to think about it is when I said that this was like sonar or, like something that was tapping at the shore. And that's what's happening is that the more people call you that, the more that sound goes out and fine tunes that and adjust that shoreline, which is actually your whole self, like your
Okay.
whole self. So it would take some time, just like on a potter's wheel. It would take some time to get the thing molded into what it is and shaped and all of that based on how you're moving stuff. So there's that, how you do that. Now, so the way that it's divided, and it's different for everybody, but for you, it was up to the age 34. So up from the time you were born until the age 34, you had you're going to laugh at this, oh boy. So you actually were learning to be very structured. You had a 4 as your gift, and you were learning about structure, dependability, reliability. People could count on you. You were very hardworking, and so you had all of those things going on in you. So think of it as like a half an 8. So you weren't quite so structured, but you were learning all of those things up until about the age of 34. And then your challenge though was to learn the lessons of the 3. And the 3 is fun, spontaneity, inner child, creativity. So all of those things were challenging for you. That's considered your challenge. And the 4 was your pinnacle, which is like your aha. So, there it is up to the age of 34. Then it goes in 9-year cycles. So up to almost the age of 44, you were more fun then. So you had the gift of the 3, and I'm guessing that might have been maybe more like when you were working on something that you enjoyed. It's not always about being spontaneous and having fun. The 3 could be the number of the musician, the artist, the writer, the poet, somebody who's doing the stage, being on stage, all of those things that sort of came easier for you once you turned 34. So, and then until you were about 44. Then it was about relationships though. So the challenge then during that 9 years was relationships, working with others, because you have these ones in your chart and eights. You're used to not only doing things your own way, but getting your own way. And so all of a sudden the universe was like, you know what, you need to learn how to work with others. And so we're going to put that challenge into your chart. So so that was up until about the age of 44. And then from 44 to 54, which you were right like on that border coming up here now that you're in between those two.
Mhm.
So you had 7 was your gift. So 7 is a lesson of spirituality. It's a lesson of learning more about yourself, self-reflection. 7 is the most prevalent number on the planet. 7 virtues, 7 vices, 7 C's, 7 major cervicals, 7 major planets, 7 days of the week. There's 7 continents. It's like 7 is a really profound number. It's God's number. So whatever God is to you, and so it could be nature. It doesn't have to be, some kind of a religious entity, but the 7 again is sort of like, that one putting a hat on and going, I'm going to put on my thinking cap and I'm going to kind of reflect and see, who am I as an individual? So that's where you've been this last 8 to 9 years, is with coming into that. And then the challenge though is a 1. And the 1 then is that in this case, I would see this as the chart, is letting go of ego, not letting ego rule you. It's about letting, and I don't mean like, ego, like you've got a big ego. I mean, the ego is the person that is that body that holds you back, or maybe makes you question everything, or doubt yourself, or fear things, or fear change. But it's also a struggle then for you to not be quite so independent. So that kind of goes back to what I said. Be careful about not being flexible enough in order for you to embrace these changes that are coming. And you have that lesson the rest of your life. The 1 is going on the rest of your life. Now, when you turn 54, 53, 54, like you're kind of transitioning from the 7 into the 6. So now this gift is going to be about family, relationships, balance. And again, here it is. Like I just said to you, like, and I hadn't paid that much attention to to the quadrants, because a lot of people don't really want to know about that. So it's interesting that you found that awareness in yourself, that as you aged, it changed. Well, yeah, here's, so it shows me in the numbers. So the 6 is about balance and harmony and creating that as the perfect number between 1 and 10. And so you have to do things that are going to bring you joy and that are going to bring you peace, and that you want to do that. And the challenge is going to be, don't do them alone, because the 6 is the number of community and the number of family, and that 1 is your challenge. So it's time for you to move out of self-reflection and start doing things more in a dynamic group setting. Sharing, the 6 is also about service at the community level. So like what you're doing, this podcast is a service. So I'm sorry, my sister's dog is just hyper. I don't know if you
It's
can hear
okay.
him. I'm sorry. Anyway, and so I had to inherit him. So
All good.
anyway, so there is the there's that. So do you have questions about that? Does that help you kind of see how it's morphed, how that potter's wheel has kind of shaped and changed, and all of those things, like those different lessons?
So I do, and so a lot of that is accurate. Again, very independent, and actually, in the course of the past 12 months, I have started to integrate my work with other people's work to create, and this is, like I said, this is only our second or third conversation, so you have not known my background, but as of like the last 6 to 12 months, I've been forming, collaborations with other professionals, my friends and colleagues, and we're doing things together a whole lot more frequently. Like, for example, this conference that I had in January, and then these things that I've got these other events coming up this year, this being 2023, that are collaborative efforts as well. And that's
And
not
that's
even knowing what you just said. That was just,
right.
yeah, that was just
but
me
but you
being.
but you see, and the way that this works is that you, it's like a blueprint. Like you come here, like to me the numbers are like a blueprint. It's almost like, and once you understand what the code is, what it's telling you, then that is a way that you can affirm things. So the way that I teach people to use the numbers, there's 3 different things. One is for affirmation or validation. Like, okay, I see this, like when I was looking for something in particular, I looked at the tag, and the tag said that the item was number 131. Well, those are numbers I really like and that I really identify with. So that told me, I was affirming, hey, yeah, this is the right decision for me. Like I couldn't just, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the right one. So I use it as a way for affirmation or validation. Then you can also use it for information. Like I found out a lot of stuff about you that you probably are like, oh my God, and everybody listening to the show now knows too. But the thing is that I have a lot of insight into you. So like there's like, I knew today when all of a sudden I discovered like I was like in the wrong time zone. I was like, oh my gosh, like I absolutely have to be signed on early. Like I knew that about you, where there's some people that'd be like, don't worry about it. We'll start at 20 after, but I knew from looking at your chart, like that was not acceptable. And it would absolutely tarnish a relationship that we were developing, as far as being co-collaborators or working, doing this podcast and all that kind of stuff. So it's a way to get information. And it also tells you, like I tell this in prices too, like for companies, like it'll tell you like what your prices is. That's something too. So when you see the eights are dollar signs to the subconscious mind. So that is going to signify that that's going to be something that's more expensive, or that there's something going on with that. And so you're going to want to look with that. So there's different numbers with different prices, different combinations with that too. Then the last thing is attraction. Like it's a way to attract things to you. So if you were somebody, let's say that you wanted to market a class and you're wanting to do it for a spiritual retreat, then you might want to do, and they're going to be like of service, and you're going to go out and, help save the planet or the whales or pick up garbage on the beach. If that's part of the spiritual retreat, you might price it at $97, because the 9 is about service at the global level and the 7 is about spirituality. But if it's something that's about finances, you might want to do it for $98, because that 8 is a dollar sign. It's going to register to people like, hey, I'm going to make money with this, or, whatever. And so there's all these things. But if you're somebody that wants to take somebody on a trip and they're going to go skydiving, $95, because 5 is about risk. It's about change. It's about stepping outside of your comfort zone. So you're going to attract those kinds of things. And again, you can use that to sort of find your tribe or your people, because if you wanted to do that, like I do a lot of my prices in 33s and 22s and 11s, because I have found that people that don't have master numbers in their chart find this really interesting, but that's it. Oh yeah, that was fun. I want people that's great. I will do charts for them, but I want people who actually want to take this information and use it. That's the whole point, is that my gift is to let people know, hey, there's a whole nother level of communicating, and numbers are the only universal language, And some people will say, well, music, but guess what? Pythagoras discovered that music is numerically based.
Mhm.
So there's a lot going on there with that too. So don't think that you just randomly were assigned these names or given these nicknames or go by these different things. It was something on your subconscious that you attracted to you, or that you liked, or whatever. And I used to have a friend who always spelled my name without the H, and it used to aggravate me. I'm like, you've known me for 20 covered without the H. I was get it through his head, but he wanted consciously. So there's a lot more to it than, yeah, this is a lot of fun and a lot of insight. And it's astoundingly accurate, and people are like, oh, well, is this like, some kind of psychic thing? And it's like, no, it's numbers. Like, it's absolutely me just looking at the numbers and interpreting what they mean. So I have more to tell you. Do you want to know some more?
Please.
Okay. All right. So right now you are in a personal year 1. So this is all about you
How did you get
starting
there? How
new
did you get
things.
that number?
Okay. So your birth date is 8/23, and your birth, it goes from birth date to birth date.
Okay.
Okay. But 2022 was a 6. 2 plus 2 plus 2 is a 6.
Okay.
So I added 8 plus 2 plus 3 plus 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 2, because that's where you will be, even though we're in 2023, until your birthday of this year. So you're in a personal year 1. So on your birthday, you'll become a year 2, which is all about partnerships and all that. So right now you're building this team, you're building these networks, you're getting out there, you're forging the things, you're starting the project. And then after your birthday, that part of the year until your next birthday is when you're going to start forming those partnerships with other people, where you're going to have those relationships with other people. You're going to work in twos with people. So a lot of guests and things like that on your podcast might be part of it. Or you might even do some consulting, instead of just doing a class, you might do some one-on-one consulting or things like that. So that would happen then. Now, we are in a universal year 7, because 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 3 is a 7. So that is all about spirituality. So you're in a year 1, but also right now in a year 7 universally. So that's everybody on the planet. So this whole year is going to be about people finding themselves, doing new things, kind of reflection, more spiritual things. You're going to see a lot more stuff, maybe even about like global initiatives and trying to do things where it's going to help other people. So this is about sort of a selfless kind of year. It's also the year that you don't have to work for what you get. You just know that what you get is what you need. So when we're in a year 8, you absolutely have to work for every penny, everything, every compliment, everything. But a year 7 is the year to receive. So sit back and receive. Now that doesn't mean quit your job and expect to keep your mortgage paid. What it means is that what shows up is exactly what you're supposed to get this year.
Okay.
Now, the other thing that's interesting is you have 0 karmic lessons in this life.
What?
Which means that you have 0 karmic lessons in this
What is
life.
it? Yeah, what does that mean?
So that means that you have absolutely every number in your name. Every number. Which most people have numbers that are missing. Like they may not have a B, a K, or a T. They might not have like an F, an O, or an X. So those are all, like that's a 6. The BKT is a 2. But you have absolutely every number in your chart, which means that you don't have any specific lessons. Now, there are three areas that I came up with that you need to expand upon, because those aren't things that you are necessarily fine tuned at yet. But the first one is the 4, the second one is the 6, and the last one is the 9. Now, what's really interesting is that you had that 4 when you first, for 34 years. Now the rest of your life, you're going to be learning about the 6. So the 4 is about hard work, detailed organization, all of that. So I think that you've improved upon that. Now, again, some people, it's not as strong as if you didn't have a 4, but you only have one 4 in your name. And the 6 is about community and service, and the 9 is also about service. So definitely, you are supposed to be expanding upon how you can be of service locally and at the community level. And again, just doing a podcast is service. It doesn't mean that you have to, join the Peace Corps or anything like that. So, or military or police, sometimes that shows up. Firefighting, that sometimes that shows up in people's charts that have those numbers. So you have that. And you also have no karmic debt. So you don't have that either. So this is kind of a life where, this particular life, you're all about sort of just experiencing it and learning more and growing more and developing more, and what you can share with the world because of this 11 that you have with this master number. Now, your vowels in your name are a 6 and your consonants are 11. So there again comes up with the 6 is how you see yourself, and the consonants are how the world sees you. So the 6 is, you're like thinking to yourself, well, I am of service. I already am of service. I do service for people. I hold doors open for people, or I pick up somebody else's garbage, or I'm going to watch the neighbor's cat while they're gone. Like whatever your service is, like you see yourself as already doing those kinds of things, and it's there, but not everybody knows it about you. So that's kind of one that you kind of hold close to your vest, because you're not going to go around holding up a sign going, I'm Keith McNally and I'm of service to the world. Like, you're kind of this, like, you just kind of want to do it because you want to do it, like from your heart. And then the consonants are the 11. So there's that leader again, that master number where you're the leader, the visionary, the creative person, the gifted teacher, all of those things. And especially, just so you know, because I know this is kind of new with the spirituality, it's about you coming into also telling people about spiritual things, like metaphysical things, like, you wanting to talk about this today on your show. We could have talked about something else. We could have talked about colors, or, massage, or, whatever, but this intrigued you. So this is a thing where, you're kind of like, I want to share this message with the world. And kudos to you for having all of your personal information being shared. That's really a step of like really opening up that heart and letting those people come in with that too. So yeah, so you have this this strong chart of these 8s and these 1s, these 11s. So you definitely have that gift of teaching and tenacity, attention to detail.
You said earlier that you do this because you want people to, I guess, take charge of their life through this, because one, it's affirming who they are, and two, it could also be used as a guide to what they're supposed to do. And I like that idea of using this as a guide or a guidepost. Quite literally, I just wrote the book Walking the Path. And so if these numbers can be used as a path to guide what I need to accomplish in the next couple of years, I would like to know how to do just that.
So start watching for synchronicities, because now you know your numbers. So like, for instance, you might be talking to somebody, and all of a sudden something will come up, and you'll look up at the address, and you're at 818 Plaza, and you'll be like, maybe there's a message in there for me. Or it could be that something comes up, and it you're the 11th person on the list, or you're sitting next to somebody who's the 11th person on the list. Like, start watching for the synchronicities, because the numbers absolutely are a way that we can look for those, to me, that you can look for those synchronicities. Though another way that I use the number, you gave me several dates that we could choose to do this recording. And so I picked today. Well, today is a 2 month of a 2 day. in a 2023 year. So it's all about partnerships, relationships. It's about, creating that kind of bond of things together. It's also an 11 day. So when you add up the 7 plus the 4. So I knew that it was a good thing for me because Rife is an 11. You have these 11s in your chart. 11 is about teaching people about metaphysical or spiritual things, all of those things, or teaching in general.
Mhm.
So I used it that way too. Like I look at that. Then also, I think we talked about this before. You do everything at 4 o'clock. Well, of course you do everything at 4 o'clock because you're this hardworking, detail-oriented thing in the box. Like it fits neatly in a box. And then I'm like, oh, it's 3 o'clock my time. Cool. Like it's fun. So those are things too that when you start scheduling something, like if you wanted to do something like writing, like you're looking on your next book, but you have a writer's block, write at 3 o'clock. Three is the number of creativity. It's
Hmm.
that number to do that. If you have something that you have to do where you have attention to detail, 8 o'clock, look at those things. That's another way that you can use it. Again, it's about information. So by looking at what the date is, what the time is, what the day of the month is, what the month is, like you can look at all of those kinds of things, and then you can utilize that to your best tool. And even in Chinese medicine, certain times of the day affect different organs differently, and so there's all this thing. So it's not as goofy as what some people would make it sound. It's all about how, what is the best time of day for you. Now 4 o'clock is a great time of day for you, but it might not be for somebody else. So
Mhm.
that's when you'd want to do things that are, hard planning or lesson planning, or like this, you're planning this particular thing. So look at the numbers to do that. Then like look at things like on certain pages. Like if you're reading something along and you're like, oh, this is really cool, look at the page number. What's the page number tell you? Like that will have a clue for you too, with different things like that. So play with it because the numbers are everywhere, and I encourage people, like, what's your license plate number? What's your social security number? What's your phone number say about you? Those are all things that found you for some way, and it's sending a particular vibration out for other people to interpret. So does that help, or do you want to give me something specific to answer?
Well,
Like,
you're the person who's trained in this. If the other person, i.e., me for right now, but anybody who's listening to you really says, if I knew my numbers, this is what they're saying to themselves. If I knew my numbers, I can be more successful or I could do whatever I need to accomplish because I would then know how to, like I said before, guide myself into that direction. How does one get trained in numbers so that they understand them better? Because I would have to listen to this conversation 1,000 times to really appreciate everything that you said because I'd be writing stuff down and then I have to, go back because earlier I gave you my own numbers, but you said they were wrong because I was using the wrong chart. So people need to use your chart.
well, it isn't necessarily my chart, a Pythagoras chart, but
Okay.
but but the thing is I don't want to say that you were wrong. It's just that yours were different, and this is the one that I particularly resonate because the Hebrews actually had their own particular thing where they actually named children based on this. It's a little bit of a different thing. The Vedic astrology does a little bit with numbers, and it's a little different. This is just the one that I was drawn to, and it's interesting because a lot of people don't know this about me, and it wasn't until years later. I've always loved math, and I've studied this for ever since I told you that, on our first interview, I had that near death experience as a
Mhm.
kid. And I think that's where I brought all this information back was, from that wisdom and knowledge table. And the thing is that uh, I've always been gifted in math, which is unusual because, a lot of people don't like math. I love it. But I was given an assignment. This was long before the movie Good Will Hunting, that everybody in our class was given an assignment in our advanced algebra class in high school to solve this particular problem. And that if we solved it, then we could become part of this club. And then we would get out of class early, or we could get special privileges or whatever. Well, I solved it and I solved it the very next day. And not only did I solved it different than what the professor, the high school teacher had it solved at. Is like, oh my God. And so, but I was the only person ever in the club. So it was no fun because if I got out early, I was the only person because nobody else ever solved it.
Oh,
But guess what it was called? He called it the Pythagorean Brotherhood.
oh,
Okay, now that was back when I was in high school. We're talking, 40 some years ago. So then all these years later, then I'm drawn to this Pythagoras stuff. And then I learned that Pythagoras and the Essenes were together, and that the Essenes are the sect of Jews that Jesus belonged to. And so a lot of the stuff that this particular thing that I'm talking about is actually has those kinds of roots to it. And so I'm just very drawn to that. And I just keep uncovering more and more and more. And then I get into healing, and there's whole numbers in healing and all of that. So first off, they can contact me. I do workshops and classes. I do charts. I can teach you enough to kind of muffle your way through. But it's years and years of study and insight and looking at what do each one of these numbers mean to me. And I kind of have a unique perspective of it. Like, it's not like I told you, this is not a numerology reading, because a
right, right.
numerology reading would tell you your name and your birth date, and here's what you should do. But I look at it more because you use the word success. And of course you would, because you have all these eights in your name. So you're like equating it like sort of to like success. And what I want to say is this is the blueprint of what your soul wants you to accomplish. So success doesn't have to necessarily be in financial terms for anybody who's listening. It's not necessarily just about how am I going to make money at this. And I want to caution you with that, because like a lot of times when you do that to sort of like, okay, I'm going to do this to, get financially sound, that kind of blows up in your face. It's all about sort of like letting the soul kind of like, what is it that your soul purpose is?
Right.
And so it's like a blueprint. And then like when you went by doctor, or you go just by Keith or whatever, like it changes. So like women who get married, it will change because they change a lot of times their last name, or if you hyphenate, all of that. It's like the blueprint stays the same, but it's like you added on a garage or you tore out a wall. The foundation is there, it's always there, but things might shift a little bit with what you were saying with that too. So yeah, it's a process. And so yeah, I do like one-on-one stuff. I've had stockbrokers have me like as a monthly retainer thing to analyze what does the name of the stock mean, what are the numbers for that particular stock. I've had car dealers talk to me about doing different things with the marketing with the numbers. So it's not just about what your name means and how can I help you with that, but I want people to do that. I want them to use these numbers as a way to make their life flow better, and know that they're on the right path and get those synchronicities. Because that's really kind of what it is that once you understand that, now you're going to pay a lot more attention to any time you see something that's an 8 or an 11, or you might start noticing that you're attracted to other people that have the 8. And a lot of times we're attracted to people that are the numbers that are missing in our name. So you don't have any missing, but you might be attracted more to a 4, a 6, or a 9. So, or locations like that, because those have lessons for you, those particular things. So yeah, and I do have a book coming out. It's in the editing stages, so they're going to explain a lot of this stuff to do that too. But does
Well,
that
I want the
help?
book, so I'm going to get the book as soon as
Okay.
it's in print. But
Okay.
as I said prior to the conversation, and we've been on the call for about 50 minutes, in 30 seconds or less, and I'm going to put all of your contact information in the description of the video, but in 30 seconds or less, give us something empowering that our audience can take away and do today.
Something empowering that our audience can take away and do today. Okay, well, today, this is a year 7. So, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go around silently saying to yourself that everything works out for me, that I receive blessings, that the universe provides me for exactly what I need, that this is all a year about me receiving, because it's a year 7, and I'm going to attract things that are going to uplift me and help me.
Rhonda, I appreciate that so much. Thank you for being on this conversation. For everybody who has been listening and watching, I appreciate you. You have a great day. Take care.
Thank you.